Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So on today's episode, I've got Joel Teague. He's the CEO at Cocharger. Now, he's also involved with the Renewable Energy Association, and I was really pleased that I managed to see Joel on a panel, hosting a panel session at the REA recently. So thank you for joining me, Joel. It's brilliant to see you.
Oh, my pleasure.
That panel session, though, that you run was just really interesting. So you showed how good you are with these things.
Well, thanks. I hadn't actually chaired before. I'm usually the loudmouth sat there in one of the guest seats, so it was different to try and let others talk. Not my usual forte, but I think I was just blessed with some really good guests, and the insight they provided was fantastic. I think what made it work was we just kept it to what does the user need. Everything all the questions, all the answers had to be from the point of view of, and why would the user want that, and why is it good? Because my pet hate is panel shows that start and end with solutions, and quite often you never quite find out why it's needed. So I was really pleased with it. The guests were amazing.
They were a really good bunch. So give me a little bit about your background and why you started Cocharger, if you will.
Right. Yeah, my background is a sort of gun-for-hire contract program project manager, usually in IT, working in marketing, automotive, bit of secret squirrel stuff, all sorts of things. And most interestingly, I did 5 years at the Met Office and learned a lot about data science, learned what it was like to be the least qualified and least intelligent person in the room all the time. Amazing place, and it gave me a new perspective on sustainability, to go with my previous sort of obsession with a bit of a petrol head, but I was an LPG head. I used to take old Jags and convert them to LPG, which was sort of helping a little bit. But then that moved to an EV thing, and it was actually a neighbour. I was living in a village, and a neighbour in that village was a mile away, and he got an EV, and he did get me hooked. You know what it's like, everybody, the first time you go in a friend's EV, that's when you want an EV, isn't it? And I ordered one and it arrived. And back then I had a driveway. I don't anymore. I'm talking to you from the fourth floor of an apartment block. I had a driveway and the car arrived with a note that said, it's going to be 6 weeks before your home charger arrives. And this was about 7 or 8 years ago now, and the nearest public charger was 7 miles away, and I don't think it had worked in 8 months. I can't even guess which network it was on back then. And that gave me a car I literally couldn't drive. So the solution was that I went to the neighbour, and obviously blame him, as you do. And the solution was that every Tuesday night on my way home from work in Exeter, I'd stop in at his driveway, he'd move his car, and I'd plug into his charge point and stick a £5 note through the door. Do you remember when a £5 note would cover a full battery? Because the battery was this big. And I'd walk home, and then on Wednesday morning I'd walk to his place and unplug and drive to work, and it sort of worked. But the expression, we need an app for that, to do that matchmaking and arrangement and reminders and calculating a fair amount to pay, really important. That came around, and then also that started me on that research thing of, would I have bought this car if I couldn't have had a home charger? And the answer was an emphatic, of course not. And that led to, and how many other people are there who've got that problem? And the answer was, well, about half of us. It's somewhere between 12 and 15 million cars that are, going to face this problem, or drivers. And back then it seemed pretty obvious that even if there had been lots of public chargers, probably would have been hard pressed to justify the inconvenience, that lack of dependability necessarily, of not just being able to plug it in and go to bed, and the extra cost and all the rest of it. And many years later, although I think we're doing a great job on public charging. I think public charging gets an unfair rap now. You look at the rate of just the size increase. Was it 43% last year increase alone? It was huge, and the quality and the seamlessness of it is all improving, and that means more people are wanting an EV. But the proportion of those people that actually get an EV without having a driveway hasn't really changed. It's not moving the needle for them. So it's clear that behind that need, everybody wants public charging. But for half of us, that's still not enough. There has to be a base charging option, an alternative to home charging that gives us that dependability, i.e. bookable, convenience, i.e. I can go to bed or go to work, and affordability to balance off the cost of the car. Otherwise, what people are doing, which is very clearly they are buying fossil fuel cars. And if the name of the game is to prevent the sale of more fossil fuel cars, then we have to address that problem. We have to look behind the barrier of just build more infrastructure and look at what do we need to offer these people to get them to not buy the fossil fuel car. So that started it all.
So that's how Cocharger was set up. Will you explain what? So obviously, your business isn't about shoving £5 notes through people's doors, is it?
not even the initial trials involved that.
So how and you've talked about the app.
Yeah.
So how does it actually work? What do potential EV drivers, somebody who's considering an EV who hasn't got a drive, what do they need to do to actually work with you?
We've made it deliberately simple to the point of simplistic, I think, because we modelled out all sorts of things here. And it divides very simply into two. It's one app, it's free, there's no subscriptions, nothing. If you have a home charge point, then you get the app and you click, I want to be a host, and you just say, I live here and I've got this kind of charge point, and they're almost all 7-point-something kilowatt type 2 home chargers. We do also have sort of churches, small businesses listing theirs, and you set a minimum price per session, and you set a price, and it's the price per hour that your charge point is running. It's really important. Nobody's paying for parking, they're paying just for the time. Yeah. Even if the car sits there for 14 hours, which is quite common, if it only takes 4 hours to charge, that's what you pay for. So they set up their hosting account as a chargee, as we call them. Terrible word, and it just stuck. We tried all the others. You get the same app, but you tick, I am a chargee, and you say, this is where I live. You can, at that point, enter the details of your car and a payment method, but in most cases, you haven't got the car yet. You just create that account, and then you can immediately see within the app which hosts you have within your area. You can look at their pricing and so on, and you can send them a message. And the idea is that gives you the confidence to order the EV. If there are no hosts in your area, which some people, I think most people now, it's someone well within a mile, but you get notified every time a host signs up within a mile of your home, which is really important, because we do have people with 2, 3, 4 hosts within walking distance of their homes, which is nice. We're going to get to that point for everybody before long. So you set up your account, and once you've got the car, you basically request bookings from your chosen host. You can add one or more hosts to your account, but generally you only use that map once. So, oh, okay, there's Susan around the corner. And you request a booking, and that can be a one-off, or you can say, right, I want, as I used to have it, every Tuesday night for a year, if you want. You can book it all at once. And you book the time that you need to leave the car. So roughly when you need to start, you need to drop it off and plug in, to roughly when you need to pick it up. And then when the time comes, an hour before, you get a reminder, as does the host, to say, make sure that they leave access to the charge point. You turn up, you plug in. Once you know it's charging or ready to charge, you start the session in the app. It's like 5 taps. You put a battery percentage in so it knows how to start its calculations. And you toddle off home or to work or whatever. And you go back and pick up the car. The vast majority of sessions, the car's finished charging long before it's picked up. And you drive off. And the app just works out, okay, we know size of your battery and the speed of the charge point, and we know what percentage it was at when you plugged in, so it would have taken about this long, and it takes payment from your card. Cocharger takes 12% for running the scheme, and the 88% goes into the bank account of the host, and everybody's happy. And that's happened, we're coming up on 5,000 times now.
Oh, that's good.
No major issues, it just works really well. The host makes decent money. There's a calculator to help them set a fair price, and it's usually coming out at about 20 to 40% more than they pay on the home tariff.
Yes.
So still significantly cheaper than your average public charging. And they get to help their community, and of course that's a big part of it. A recent survey is the most important thing, is help your community to decarbonise. It's more important to our host than making money. But both are important. And the chargee gets that dependable, affordable and convenient way to charge their car. It's pretty much home charging, but with a longer walk to your front door, is kind of where we put it. And yeah, we modelled all sorts of ways of doing it years ago, but actually people have been using this for 4 years now, and it just works really well.
So, because I was going to actually ask you about how they set the charge. So, as in, the fees. So you're suggesting the fees for them. Kind of the price per kilowatt hour that they set. Yeah. That's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and the nice thing is we stick to that neighbourhood model. We're sort of a facilitator to facilitate an arrangement between neighbours, and quite often that's just two people. We do have hosts with 2, 3, 4 chargees. Quite often we have one host with one Uber driver or one delivery driver who charges 7 times a week. But the nice thing is, you've then just got two neighbours who communicate and coming up with a price that is fair to both parties. The lovely thing is there is a broad sweet spot where the host is still getting properly paid for. Let's face it, you've bought a charger, they haven't had to, so they're getting properly paid for it. But the chargee is still getting a really reliable, cheap way to run an EV, and that sweet spot is nice and broad, and it just works out really well.
It's a brilliant idea, because public charging itself is a lot more expensive, obviously, isn't it? Because you've got the 20% VAT on public charging.
Unfortunately, yes. Get that down to 5 as soon as possible, please.
And
the thing is, I think the important thing is to recognise, without good public charging, nobody wants an EV. It's just that without a good base charging option, whether that's home or workplace or community or mobile or cross pavement or all these other, as we call them, alternative base charging, ABC methods, nobody wants an EV either. If you took home charging out of the equation, who'd have an EV? Very few people. I think it's something like 5 times less likely to buy the EV if you can't home charge at the moment, which isn't good enough. We can't have 12 million cars or 12 million motorists still pottering around in 8-year-old diesels in 2038. So that's what this is for. It's just one ABC option, one of many. And Cocharger suits an awful lot of people, but it won't be the best option for everybody. You've got your cross pavement, you've got your mobile solutions like Charge Fairy. Public charging is in there, but we need to be more sophisticated about explaining the different types of public charging. There's a vast difference between a lamppost charger up your street and a 300 kilowatt charger on the M6. They are different use cases. We've got to get much better at presenting to people who can't charge at home. These are the options. There's lots of different ones. One of them will work for you. Get the car, and then you'll find the one that works best for you. I think that's the key thing that we're trying to do. Cocharger is just one part of that jigsaw, if you like.
I think it's about publicising that information enough, isn't it? And like you say, providing, say for example in Reading, we've not got there's not loads of charging just yet. But really, it feels like the local authorities should be working with companies like yourself to actually spread that message, to say, this is what's out there.
Yeah.
These are the reasons why we have these options. So and we need to decarbonise as a town. Yeah. So therefore, let's move this forward. That's how it feels, Joel.
Yeah. It does, and I think we've got off as an industry. We've got off on the wrong foot. and I can speculate as to why, but I won't because I'll get in trouble. There's been, let's face it, you hear about home charging, you hear about public charging, and you very rarely hear about the big gap in between. And I think that the local authorities have had too many years of build infrastructure, and they're still getting it now. It's getting better. I think Senex, to help them out, are being really good about educating them that there's more to it than that. But I feel there's too much emphasis on putting the right number in the number of charge points you put out there, and not enough emphasis on have I moved the needle in terms of vehicle registrations away from fossil fuels, because that's the result that we're after. And I think that there, you know, I wrote that article last year, the elephant article as it became known, which was the one that pointed out that 4 years running, massive increase in public infrastructure, very impressive. I think it was 70% per year, average over 4 years, and it had got easier to use, more consistent, more reliable, and the proportion of people, I think it was based on ZapMap figures, proportion of ZapMap respondents, so early adopters, a little bit skewed but still valuable. At the beginning of those 4 years, 84% of them could charge at home. So that's a problem, right? That means you're 5 times less likely to go EV. But after 4 years and quintupling the number of public charge points, that had moved to 84% hadn't moved. And it's a very awkward truth that public charging alone isn't moving the needle. We need to switch that narrative away from, oh, you haven't got a driveway, oh, you'll find a public charger. No, they won't, they'll buy a petrol car. They were buying the petrol car, they are buying the petrol car, they will continue to buy the petrol car. That narrative doesn't work. It needs to switch to one of reassurance of, oh, well, don't worry, there's a load of ways of doing it, including these different types of public charging. Order the car, and one of them is going to work for you. And that is a much more valid response. I feel that just saying public charging it's a cop-out. I think it's kind of abandoning that customer. I think it's abandoning that user and saying, oh, I'll deal with the guy with the driveway. Well, no, sorry. We've got a climate crisis and air quality to think about. We can't abandon half the population. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is to get the narrative switched around to 3 buttons. There's home charging, there's ABC in the middle, and then there's public charging. And everybody will want one of the first two, a base charging option. Otherwise, the third one's irrelevant. What they won't do, and they're not doing, is buying a car and then just queue up at a public charger every week. It's not realistic.
I've got friends myself some have bought new cars and they've been petrol, and others that have older diesels that probably going to buy another diesel. And you're right, I don't want to be sanctimonious or condescending, because that's not the kind of person I am, but when it comes to trying to get people to move, it's got to be, it's great. I'm talking to people like you, on this podcast, and I really appreciate it, but there's got to be more push, hasn't there, to kind of get people to recognise, like you say, what these options are, and get them to understand that actually you can do something about this. And a lot of people, because they're reading so much negativity in the press, and they see a price of an EV being more expensive, well, right, okay, the price parity is coming down, especially for kind of used EVs, and Auto Trader is saying that electric vehicles are kind of like I think they're number 1 fast selling cars, and things like that. We've got to, I feel like we're kind of getting there, but it's just so sluggish, isn't it?
I think so, and I think it's been polarised. I know that we've got a market-driven approach to this, which is a whole other soapbox. There's a reason why China's ahead. But I think that we've really let half the population down, in that there has been a tendency in certain parts of this ecosystem, if you like, to just focus on shift the tin on the forecourt. Make the sales that you can make today, very short-termist. And I think we need to understand the psychology of this. I don't think it's a single hit. I think, although we've had some fantastic research done, you mentioned Auto Trader, their research is so good. And it did conclude that misinformation was the big barrier, right? Once we get the misinformation down and under control, there's this huge cohort of people, it's basically people with driveways, who will then switch to EVs fairly much of their own volition. And there's this outlier on this diagram that had size of community, if you like, size of group along one axis, and propensity to buy an EV up the other. And the one dot, the outlier dot, which was way up in the top right, so i.e. a massive group of people, and it was the only one above the first quarter of this axis, was people without driveways. And they're over to the right, unlikely to buy. And that told us everything we need to know. It's, this is the problem we've got to address. And it's not just a pull. We have got to accept that we're through early adopters, we're through innovators, we're into first half of Main Street. Those people are more worried about paying their heating bills and not being late for dropping their kids off and getting to work. And it is not realistic or fair to expect everybody to go, oh, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this sacrifice and spend more running my car and more time running my car because to help the environment. You'd be waiting until we're all gone. We have to listen to them. We have to give them viable base charging options. There are things we can't do anything about, like used market, the fact that, I'd never had a car under 6 years old before. Most of mine have been 12 years old. That's happening now. The used market is catching up. Public infrastructure, it's going great. That will get there. These temporal things that will just go away over time. Then there's the perceived things like all the misinformation about, I don't know, they catch fire, they put puppies on spikes on Tuesdays, whatever it is that you've read in the Daily Hile or whatever rubbish on Facebook. That, we've got the likes of, Stop Burning Stuff to help deal with that. Great job, guys. If you're not supporting them, get on Patreon and do it.
Please do.
But it leaves the one big, if you like, rock under the water there, which is this genuine barrier of, is that person who does have to think about money and does have to think about practicalities, is that person really going to switch to an EV on the basis of once a week I'm going to drive to find an available public charge point and plug in and read a novel for an hour and a half? No, they haven't, they're not, and they won't. They might do it if there is an array of chargers along their street. We're going to find out, because those sorts of charge points haven't been in the ground long enough to move the needles, and I think they're starting to. They might do it like Cocharger, the sort of stuff that you get charge light and connected curb, all this sort of thing going on. Hubs is another one. We don't know yet, but there's only one way to find out. It's great that those are going on. They might do it if there's a charge ferry van that will come and charge their car wherever it's parked overnight. I love that idea. And they might do it with a gully being cut. We know a lot of people are doing great work on that. And we know they certainly will switch to an EV if they know they can book and rent a neighbour's charge point and just plug it in and go home to bed. And that's our part of it. That's the co-charger bit. So that's the focus. I think we've got to shift away from this idea that it's a single decision point. It's not. There's an early decision point which can be at any time in a 6-year buying cycle where people at the moment are dismissing the idea of an EV, and we need to keep them in the room by saying, no, be reassured. Look, here's 6 ways. I think I just listed a load of them.
Yeah.
A load of ways of doing this.
Yeah.
It's all right, you can have an EV. So when they get to the next car decision point, they'll go, let's have a look at this. And then there's the practical decision of what am I going to choose as my base charging option. And there's 2 spikes there. So we just need to get an awful lot better at how we think about this. Obviously, I'm quite proud that we've produced a service that we know does move that needle. People have bought, I think it's on some of our videos, some of our user videos of people sent in going, you know what, Cocharger made the difference. This is why I'm in an EV, isn't it great? And I suspect the other ABC options have got similar things. So that's all we're asking really, is can we change the narrative away from 2 buttons to 3 and away from solutions to reassurance.
Because so you're really offering it's something that's affordable, isn't it? So actually we've just said public charging is more expensive. If you've got somebody like so near us, we're lucky because we've got a drive, but near us we've got a row of terraced houses. There's kind of 2 or 3 rows of terraced houses with no driveway, but actually for somebody to be able to come and charge on our drive, it's literally probably take them about 10 minutes to walk, leave it overnight, but actually they're not paying for the public charger that's up 5 minutes. It is fair enough, it's 5 minutes away, but actually that'll be like 75p per kilowatt hour, whereas you're talking about kind of what, 50p.
Yeah, the average, no, it's not even that. I think with domestic tariffs coming down again, we just dropped down into the 30s equivalent.
So that in itself, it's not obviously as cheap as having the home charger, but it's the next option. And in a way, we need to be demonstrating all of these affordability options, don't we?
Exactly. Yeah, and it might be. Can I just point out that we talk about 70 odd p, but if there might be you've got a curbside charger that's 28p. Some of them are subsidised. Again, it comes back to that. Choose the car, find the best option. There'll be one for you. And I think the nice thing about the community charging thing that Cocharger does is that it uses existing infrastructure that is vastly underutilised. Nobody knows, but there's something in excess of 800,000 private chargers out there in the UK. And very few of them get above 5% utilisation. I think some of them creeping in with bigger batteries, some of them are up to 7 or 8. And all we're doing is facilitating the increase in utilisation. And it's one of those win-win things. We're doing really good work with people like Uber, because with a community charger around the corner with a host they can use, they will keep a host busy all on their own. An Uber driver, we know how hard they work. And the last thing they want is to finish a shift at midnight and then go and queue behind another Uber driver and a delivery van and try and get some sleep in the car while it charges, and then go home for whatever's left of the night before rinse and repeat. It's not good. So we're trying to find as many hosts as we can. So call out anybody with a private charge point, get listed on Cocharger, because you are going to help people to clean up the air around you and to improve their well-being and all sorts of things. And I think that's what we're trying to get out there, is sometimes the solution isn't tins and strings. Sometimes the solution is people and collaboration and helping. And all we had to do was come up with a way of making that work for everybody.
And is there a way, do you think, that we can communicate with our local authorities to get them to actually start looking at these different options and providing information packs on them? Because your option and kind of the gullies and all of the other things that are available, like I say, I've got to say, right, you don't know what you don't know. And actually, because moving to an electric vehicle seems so different, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's just a car. It's just powered differently. The car itself it's just the same. It's just, it drives the same. You get in, you sit down, it's got a steering wheel. It's just got a battery and motors. It is the difference is the charging, isn't it?
It is really, yeah.
People need to get their heads round.
Yeah, and also I think there is a lot of deliberate exaggeration of the sort of mystification of EVs. And then there's an awful lot of, is that it? It's a simplification. And those of us who have them, not many of us want to go back. You can argue about the sort of, what about Ferraris? And I empathise with that, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about the cars people use every day. And that means, I missed the engine note. Come on, you drive a Focus Z-Tech. Sounds like a sewing machine with a cold. You don't miss that. So,
I love that.
That sort of thing going on. And I think this is what we've got to do. And I think that the work that the likes of Stop Burning stuff are doing, and Auto Trader as well, really good stuff. going back to the authorities, Cenex are doing a good job of this. I think they are getting it out there. Cocharger's host data is on their Nevis database, so you can use that. I think there's a bit of a mind shift got to happen. They seem to think of charger sharing as filling in the gaps around public, and that's upside down. Why would you do the expensive, difficult, long-term thing, disruptive thing, and also the polluting thing first? Share what you've got and then build infrastructure to fill in the gaps. That's the way to do it. We've got a challenge. I can't say which authority, but they got hold of us recently, and they've got their Levi grant, really good thing. And I think they've only worked out they can put in 120 public charge points into quite a big residential area for the money that they've got. So the challenge I've put to them is, I think that if you make that 119, we could get you 119 more for the price of the one. So I reckon, given that they have got access, they've got reach to their population, they've got various ways that they can get hold of the people, because in their area, I think I worked out they've got 4,000 private charge points.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they could get 119 of those.
Yeah.
Just by a bit of comms, and also why not just pay the first 119 to sign up, give them 50 quid, and you've just got 119 bookable residential area, reliable charge points that are safe to use. You know, it's not like you're going to be in a car park somewhere, for less than the price of a public charge point.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what we need to get out there is share first. It's the easy, cheap bit that looks after itself. And from a local authority point of view, the lovely thing is you don't have to worry about the maintenance or anything like that. There's an on-site maintenance engineer, customer services rep called the owner. So that's what we're offering to them. And I think that's a nationwide thing, is for the sake of 1% of the budget, you could probably do a doubling of the capacity.
My God, I've not even thought about it that way. But of course, public charging, just to install and put a rapid charger in, it's not a cheap.
It's not, and you have to do it.
Money, is it?
Yeah, and you have to do it. I think one thing that I've said in a few meetings, and it's caused a few awkward gulps, is that those 120 charge points they want to put in, I have to point out, they won't be used by local residents. They will be used mainly by people visiting from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, those people 100 miles away won't buy the car. It is important, and I think by doing that share first principle, it means that your resources and your budget can be expended on the essential work where you do need to build the infrastructure. It's not instead of, it's as well as, it's a way of focusing the resource you've got where it will make the biggest difference.
It's funny, you know, you're just making me think about kind of this is the community aspect of everything, isn't it? And I suppose for us, so where I live, with this 10 houses on a little close, and during lockdown, so during, you know, kind of the first few lockdowns, first lockdown, I kind of put a note out to all we don't really see each other that much, the neighbours, do you know what I mean? And I've been here since 2010, and actually, you know, we made a community of of that period of time, because I was like, right, let's just get a little WhatsApp group, blah blah blah, and to me, it's what you're doing is building back that community, isn't it? We've kind of slipped here, you know, we don't see each other that much again, blah blah blah, but what you're doing is you're providing local authorities and local, you know, different areas that ability to kind of network as a community and build up that community feeling again, aren't you?
It is. I think it's tapping into something we've forgotten about. There's been a move generally away from your sort of collectivist mindset and into the individualist one, as we all know. You have to look around the world and see what's going on. And this is the sort of thing that drops away with that. And I'll be honest, when we first started this and started playing with the model and testing it out, we thought there would be a lot more social involved. In reality, it's if you're a host and you've got chargee visiting, it's a bit like the postman. You can wave through the window if you want. But it's not like you have to be there. It's just you arrange it and they come and plug in and they're gone before you know it. But it does give people the opportunity to know that they're helping the community. And I'm finding that someone with an EV they don't like their neighbours driving past in a dirty great diesel SUV with the exhaust at the height of their kids. It's a bit like ex-smokers are the most vehement anti-smokers, aren't they? And we're just offering people an opportunity to really make a difference. You can. There are lots of levers you can pull. If you look out there, I was talking to Ripple the other week, because like me, you can't put stuff on the roof, but you can buy someone else's renewables, and it actually helps you to take ownership of your energy supply. And obviously to us, then sharing that via your charge point to help your neighbours take the energy from your wind farm or whatever you bought in for. There's a poetry to that. So the sort of rebel in me loves this poetry where if you've got a renewable energy supply and you've got a charge point, by sharing it with some neighbours, you are diverting the spend that is currently going to the fossil fuel companies at fuel stations into your renewable energy supply. I love that.
I know.
It's really good stuff, and I think that's the way we get things done, because to be honest, the corporate world's not doing a great job. So, but we can.
I totally get you. And last year I talked to Graham Cooper, who before he left National Grid, and we were talking about democratising energy, and actually that's kind of what you're providing for charging, aren't you? You're providing democratisation of charging. You're in control then. And even better, I suppose, if you're working with, if you have a host that also has renewables, so they've got solar panels on their roof and they've got battery like we have, we're very lucky, then you're theoretically using renewable energy to also fill your car up with charge, aren't you?
Exactly. And you say you're lucky, but it was you that decided to do it.
Yeah.
We all get this. I get, oh, you're so lucky living in Devon. No, I moved to Devon. And it's difficult sometimes. But I think that what we are seeing with stuff like Cocharger and Ripple and all the rest of it are these great big easy levers that the ordinary person can pull that make a genuine difference. It's not just, I'm going to recycle bottle tops. This is a great big chunk. If you're a Cocharger host with, say, an Uber driver, you're saving well over 10 tons of CO2 a year just by sharing your charge point. It's absolutely huge differences. And if you're supplying that from renewable energy supply, it's a really big difference. There are so many people, and Graham Cooper, great example. He sees that democratization as a solution to, there's going to be a challenge to the grid, but actually it's also the biggest solution to the grid, because they don't care too much about the total amount of energy it's when we want it, and everybody wanting it all at once. And if you've got 35 million batteries that happen to be sat on four wheels, that only use their full capacity in a day 5 times a year, there's your solution. You've just, between them, those batteries occupy an area the size of Birmingham, I worked out, because I'm boring like that. You imagine if you could just magic up a sort of a battery storage facility for the national grid that big. Well, you don't have to. It's being built right now in the factories for building cars. So I love the fact that actually the solution is in pushing things down and out into that more micro model, that localized model, which has got the democratization of sharing and so on, vehicle to grid and all the rest of it. It is coming together, and I like the fact it's happening faster than any of us thought, thanks to people trying stuff. You've got a big shout out to the likes of Claire Miller. Without her, so the godmother of vehicle to grid. So have made this stuff happen, and things that I thought would be, in 5 years' time we're going to see that picking up. No, now. It's happening now. And it's brilliant.
It's, like you say, the rapid change. I only know a little bit about vehicle to grid. I've kind of got, and both me and you, we're both part of a WhatsApp group, aren't we? So we both see this stuff about vehicle to grid, and I just feel like I'm a complete novice when people are talking about all this technical stuff. But I get it. I get how brilliant this, having vehicles, having cars, EVs that can be used as energy sources is just blowing, isn't it? You know, and
Yeah.
like you say, somebody like Claire Miller, who's kind of runs and is involved in all this stuff. It's just amazing,
It's
and I will
fantastic.
get her on the podcast at some point. I
Yeah,
will,
please do.
because
She's one of my favourite people. And
just
have you learned the same sagely nod that I have when everything's going over your head, but you're sort of picking up on every fifth word, and you go, yes,
yeah.
and looking to the other person for their response. And please, nobody ask me.
I,
Yeah,
I'm very good at that sagely nod,
yeah.
definitely. I really am.
I express it as I stick to the how. Sorry, no, I stick to sorry. Yeah, I stick to the why, and I let the
Yeah.
Claires of this world
Yes.
work out the how. And I'd like to think that the why people are important too.
Absolutely. So, do you know what? Of course. So I want to talk to you about. We started off about the REA, the Renewable
Mm.
Energy Association. So you're part of an EV forum steering group at the
Yeah.
REA, aren't you? Can you just explain a little bit about? So I'm going to be having Matthew Adams on the podcast in a few weeks'
Yes.
time. Um, but can you just explain a little bit about your specific forum,
Yeah.
what you're doing?
Well, the EV forum, which is now Recharge UK, is
Yes,
becoming
of
sort of
course.
the EV industry. What's the word? Association, if you like, very broad within the Renewable Energy Association.
Yes.
And within that now, it's breaking out. There's a very useful group called the Cross Pavement Group. Mark Constable from Trojan chairs
Yes.
that one, and I think the overall group as well. And that is looking into the challenges and technical solutions and innovations of how to get power from a domestic supply, literally across a pavement out to a car. So you haven't got your issues with the hardware and that, apart from anything else.
Yes.
All the advantages of things like EV tariffs and so on. Really useful group. And there's another one that we've just kicked off called the ABC Group, going all the way back to the earlier part of this conversation, the Alternative Based Charging Group, and that's a non-technical one into which the members will all be the likes of Cocharger, Charge Ferry, and the cross pavement people. Any company, including your curbside charging, lamppost charging, anything like that. Any company with an offering that is aimed at giving a viable alternative to home charging within that group. And there's two things going on there. One of them is to kick off some research to quantify the size of the problem. The indicators are that you're about 5 times less likely, if you can't charge at home, to go to an EV, but we need better than indicators. We need some really, really good research on that.
Yes.
And the second thing is to start getting the change of narrative. You know, there are websites and processes of various sorts all over this sort of ecosystem, which have got this 2-button thing. You go to buy an EV and you go, well, how do I charge it? Home charging, public charging. Wrong. Sorry, it just hasn't worked, guys. It's been 4 years, 5 years running. It hasn't worked.
Exactly.
Time to insert the third button saying home charging, ABC, or whatever you want to call it. And we're seeing that now. There's a big leasing company last week swapped out their just use public charging page for an ABC page.
Good.
And that's what we're trying to bring about, is change the whole user experience so that eventually what we'd like to see is a situation where, a bit like if you stopped someone in the street and said, name me 3 ways to heat a house, I bet people could probably do it. We need to be able to stop people in the street and say 3 ways to charge a car while you're at home, or 3 ways to run an EV.
Yes.
And they should be able to name 3. And
Yes.
that's what the
Right.
ABC group is seeking to address. We don't want revolution. We're not asking for much. We just need a change of narrative away from, I'll just use a public charger, dismissive, to reassurance, there are ways. Here's a load of ideas. Order the car, and then find out which one works best for you. It's such an important switch, and that's what the ABC group is going to achieve.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Do you know, you're involved with so many amazing things. I've just really enjoyed talking to you, Joel. I'm looking forward to seeing you hosting more panels in future. It's going to be great, honestly. So
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. I'm going to share all your contact details, and you're on LinkedIn, aren't you? You've got, so is it best to actually get the people to get the app as well as the website? Where's the
Yeah,
best
I think
place?
there's an awful lot within the app. You can look at the website, all the explainers are there. There's stuff on YouTube. Get the app. I think the main call outs are anybody who wants to be involved with that ABC group. This is a collaboration of competitors, if you like. We don't really compete. This is rising tide floats all boats. Get in touch. Let's get you into that group because it all helps. If you are an individual organisation with private chargers that you can share, just get it listed. We've just gone past. Did I mention we went past 20,000 registered users day before yesterday? 20,000 of them. And we're already the second biggest charging network in the UK. Did I mention that?
No, you didn't.
No, there you go. But we need to be the biggest. We need to have it so that everybody, or as close to everybody as possible, has got a couple of Cocharger hosts within a 5-minute walk. Yeah. Get it listed. It helps. The third thing is just collaboration. If people have got, companies, anything. We built Cocharger to be a really useful free tool in everybody's box, and we get approached daily by energy companies, car companies, leasing companies, all sorts of things, rental companies. We just want more of that. Let's collaborate the hell out of this. And the last one, of course, is investors. always looking for investors. We're doing something very exciting and important here. So, that's the last call out. When the next round of investment, get in touch.
So, everybody, you know how to get hold of him. He's doing a fantastic job. Joel, I'm going to say thank you ever so much for joining me on this. And I'm going to say to everybody else, thank you for listening and watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Electric Evolution. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected with us. And if you're inspired by our journey towards a sustainable future and want to support our mission on a monthly basis, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Your support really helps us to bring the latest insights and discussions in the world of clean energy, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging and sustainability to you. If a regular subscription isn't what you're looking for, you can always consider buying us a coffee. Just head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Every cup helps us to keep the electric evolution moving forwards. And if you're curious about our work in the EV infrastructure sector at Full Circle Continuous Improvement, why not visit us at www.fullcircleci.co.uk to find out more. And if you want to send me a message, you can always email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. And finally, please don't forget to share this podcast if it sparked your interest. And let's keep spreading the word about all of these topics that we're covering. So, until next time, see you soon. Bye!